a special guest with me. But before I introduce my guest, I want to remind you that the Hairdresser Hotline is open. You can call, you can text, you can rant, you can rave, you can ask questions. The number is 201-564-5007. We will not answer or respond to this line, but we will be using your questions and comments on the podcast anonymously, unless you want us to shout you out. Just let us know. But with no further ado, I want to introduce Shanna Wiedekemper. Hello. You have been one of my students for so long. I'm so excited to actually get to interview you on the podcast and share your story.
Hello. I'm happy to be here. Honestly, it's been transformative.
So before we get into like the meat of the story, how did you find Destroy the Hairdresser? What led you to us? I always like asking our listeners or our interviewees what they did to find us.
I listened to your podcast for many years, and it was in my rotation of podcasts, honestly, but I always liked hearing that perspective that was not of the norm. There is somebody that I would listen to that was very fact-based and very much kind of fear-based, I feel like, but I felt like Destroy the Hairdresser was a totally different approach. And it only took me a few years, but I finally decided to get into it after, this is so strange that it happened this way, but I worked with somebody that we had such opposing views. And it ended in chaos. And so I was like, I need to find something that's kind of opposite of my approach now. And that's actually why I started with Destroy the Hairdresser. And I feel like a lot of that approach that you take is opposites, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's funny that you feel like that you listen to other industry podcasts and they're kind of fear-based, because a lot of people think that's what we're doing. But I think if you really listen to the message of our podcast, it's that we're really excited for the future, and that what we should be afraid of is staying the same, right? And not changing and not taking risks. So you found the podcast, and then what was the final straw when you were like, I need to get a coach? Like, what was the moment where you were like, okay, I've listened to enough episodes, I'm like ready to jump in?
I don't know if it was like postpartum or what, but I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. I remember specifically where I was when I called you, and I was like, I feel like a pimple about to burst. And I hate using that term, but I'll never forget it. And I was like, I just need something to change. I think I went back to work with him. I don't know. That was my second child. I went back to work like maybe 2 weeks later. And
2 weeks. Wow.
Yeah. My first one, I think I was about a week after.
Gosh.
And I will say I'm kind of a workaholic, but at that point I was like, oh no, this is not good. I had postpartum rage. It was really bad. And yeah, I was looking to make a change, and I felt like I was successful, like from an outsider's perspective, but I wasn't feeling total fulfillment. I was feeling a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion on what the next steps were. So yeah, that was a big push.
I remember, you and I worked together that first time. We had like I don't know, almost a year of work together. And then you took a break from coaching. And then you actually came back later. And it was funny because you said, I remember you telling me, I implemented everything DTH taught me. And then I took a break from coaching. And then you kind of undid everything that you learned with DTH. And then you came back and I remember you saying, you're like, okay, so I realized that by undoing everything that DTH was right, that these methods do really work. Can you tell us a little more about that experience of, coming into coaching, learning the tools, and then leaving and making those changes, and then being like, nope, I'm going back to Destroy the Hairdresser? Because I think a lot of people leave coaching and make changes, and they're afraid to come back, or they're afraid to be like, hey, I tried something different and it didn't work, and I want to go back to what we were doing. I would love to hear how that happened and what made you say, you know what, I need to call DTH again.
I have to say first, before I go into that, I stopped coaching because you wanted me to go out and network. I was so petrified of
Oh yeah.
networking. And that is like, that's why I
So
quit.
I didn't really. Maybe I did know that, but I don't remember it that way. But that must have been what you were in your head like dealing with. I didn't know that was the final straw of like I gotta get out of here.
I sent you a message after our coaching call and I said, I think I'm gonna have to leave because I'm not willing to do the work. And I don't think I fully
Okay.
shared
Yeah.
that, but I was like, oh, there's no chance. I'm not gonna go meet people. I'm not gonna go talk to people. I was terrified, and now I'm like, I thrive in that. I can't believe that was just. I don't even think that was 2 years ago or a year ago. I don't even know when it
That was
was.
a little bit over a year ago. But what did you? So you didn't want to network, which very
Yeah,
normal. Enough. So it's always funny why people what assignments we give people that make them leave.
yeah,
It's never the big ones. It's usually these like smaller ones like networking, which in reality is a kind of a small thing for a business owner to do. So we never
mhm.
it's always funny why people are like, oh, I can't do the work. um, what did you do when you left? What did that you were gone for about a year? What happened in that year?
I had another baby,
We're 3 babies in,
and
right?
yeah, 3 babies in.
Great.
Um, I went to another coaching company which I had worked with before, and that's when I switched things out of what I was doing and went back to package pricing, which was like, I think it was exciting for me to say that in a way to some of my clients because I was like, oh my gosh, like here you get a package and you get all of this included and it's just this price. And then the further I got into it and I switched to only extensions and I cut out a bunch of clients. And I was like, oh my God, I'm spending like 4 or 5 hours on some people and I'm only getting paid this amount when I could be getting paid so much more. And also every decision I made no sense. I was like, why did I cut out all these people? And that's what you said. Why did you cut out all these people? I'm like, I don't know. I make jokes like I would be a really good cult leader because or cult follower because I trust the process so much that I'm like willing to go all in, which is important to do. I think you should trust the process. But
Not
I came
blindly.
back,
Not blindly.
not blindly.
Yeah.
No. Do it from a place that resonates with you, but trust the process.
Right.
It's slow. It can be slow. Um, anyways, I came back because I was just feeling like lost again. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing with my business? Whatever. So I came back to you and you were like, okay, why don't you go back to hourly? And I had to do this like almost like walk of shame where I texted my clients back that I had dropped. I was like, I've suddenly turned into Hermes where I'm like not allowing everybody in. And now I'm like, you're exclusive. You get to come back to me for this amount. And then, anyways, went back to hourly. Most people came back, which they were thrilled about. But yeah, that was quite humbling. But I'm glad I did it because you have told me actually one of the most impactful things you told me most recently was that I needed to break up with my ego. And I will say it was a gut punch. But if you know the ego, you know it exists in being low and down on yourself, but also in overly people pleasing and making everybody happy and doing things.
Yeah.
You think it's coming from a good place, but you're doing things literally just to make sure that you're still liked and likable,
Yeah.
which I still struggle with a little bit. But that was a major realization
Well,
and
it
so
was
powerful.
I love when students. This is why we have an open door policy with our students. Like you can leave and come back. There's no weirdness, and we'll always meet
Mhm.
you where you're at. But I actually we call students that return, we call them boomerang students. And what I love about a boomerang student is that when they come back, they take Destroy the Hairdresser to the next level because they usually undo things and then they try something else. They usually find out it's a lot more work than the DTH way. And I know that our methods are disruptive, but I really think Destroy the Hairdresser is the easiest way to run a salon. It's just
Mhm.
that
Oh,
it's hard internally and emotionally and mentally, but like physically, it's the easiest way to run a business. And I think sometimes when something feels easy, it feels wrong.
mhm.
Like it has to be a little more complicated. It needs to be a little more, difficult. And when people come back after they've tried something else, they're always the best students because they're like, I already know it works. I already know it works because I've done it and then I undid it and then I understand now why we do it. So I love that boomerang effect. And how was your first coaching experience? We were doing a lot of transformational work of hourly pricing and kind of getting you have a studio and we were hiring people. What was the most impactful part so far in that coaching experience and trying to grow your suite into a bigger salon?
From that beginning set, like when I first started working with you?
Yeah, from the first time, and then we'll talk about kind of the second time, but that first time when it was really about, you know, we were considering
Mhm.
opening a new salon or getting a bigger space. What ended up happening and what was most impactful in that first round?
God, there was so much that was so impactful because you're right. Like a boomerang student you have a different perspective. I am somebody that if I step away from a situation, I can really truly evaluate it. I think most people can. But that first time around, I'll never forget. We were working on my reactive system, and I, again, was trusting the process. I didn't think much of it, but I was like, eventually something will come of this. But that was wow. Like that, I've already said this to you, but like that transformed my family, my parenting, my home life. Like, and it's still a constant transformation because once you know that concept, you can't unlearn it. The restriction portion, still trying to like slowly, gradually get better with the restriction, but that was transformative because, yeah, it didn't just affect in a good way, my business and my communication and my clientele. It also impacted my family in a really, really healthy way.
Yeah.
Um, and just your ability to like push me to do things that I wanted to do. And it wasn't even a push, it's like a gentle nudge. But somehow, whenever somebody tells me to do something, I'm like, I'm going to do this. He told me I had to do this tomorrow, so I'm going to do it now. Getting me out of that comfort that I was like kind of sitting in and like waiting for the next chaotic thing to happen to force me to change. That just got me out of all kinds of fearful, I don't know what the word would be for that, but all out of like, it forced me to not be scared of things. So
Right.
I was looking at buildings, I was creating, I was doing things that I never thought was possible because before, like, of course I would go and take risks, but it would be in a way that was very lacking any structure whatsoever. I would just be like, oh, I'm just going to go do this thing and not even review the contract, just sign the contract,
Right.
think nothing of it, no lawyers, nothing
Well,
involved there.
there's a big difference between risky behavior and risk taking, right? Some of us are okay being risky, but the risk taking involves that calculation, like understanding why I'm taking this risk. And you've as a student and as a leader, you've done a great job of discerning what risks to take and what risks you don't want to take. And how would you say working with a coach transformed your work life? How did money start to change for you? How did leadership start to change for you? How did coaching change those fundamental parts of business?
As far as like the leader portion, I don't feel like I truly fell into that role. Like I always felt like I was a leader, but I never had a team because I
Yeah.
was too scared to hire. Um, I I stopped thinking about it from how am I going to impact them or how are they going to perceive this message to delivering the message and doing it in a way that's certain instead of being wishy-washy. I feel like before I would ask what they thought and which I still do that, but I feel like I didn't lead truly. I was kind of just hoping and wishing that they would understand what I had to say. Um,
What about
yeah, I
financially?
didn't. And financial, oh my God, we can't even, that is insane. Just to give you an idea, because I love numbers, like I was charging $150 for an all over color and haircut. This was with a blow dry, everything, the whole thing. So that would take me like 2.5 to 3 hours. I would block out. And then one day, David said, I want you to change your pricing to like, I think you said $185 an hour. And I was like, okay. And then you go, well, what do you think you should do? And I was like, I don't know. I see like 200 an hour. And I was thinking eventually, or like, okay, do it tomorrow. Do it by October 1st, which was tomorrow, next day. And so overnight, it went from charging $150 for this color, this package price, to charging 200 an hour. So that went automatically. I mean, that like,
Right.
that was insane. And I really didn't lose anybody.
That package went from $150 for 3 hours to $600 for 3
hours. Overnight. And most people did not leave. They were like, they stuck around for that first round, but then once I started slowly escalating to higher, it was a slow drop off. Honestly, I was way overbooked. I was working, I don't know, probably 5 days a week, almost 12 hours a day. I was working a ton.
With 3 babies. I didn't
see my children with 3 babies.
Oh my god.
This actually, that was with my first and second. My third, I feel like I get way more time with her and way more time with them now, thank God.
Yeah.
But that was massive. And then I actually got out of the fear of hiring people. It's kind of, somebody said this before, I think Joy or somebody had said like that's her favorite part of, somebody had said this, that's their favorite part is hiring. It is fun. It's actually really fun to meet new stylists. I had never connected with people in the area. And now I feel like it's a slow progression. We have a very small salon, but I love it. It's very intimate and like, more and more people know about us because of that.
Tell the listeners where your salon is located and how many people you started with and how many people you have now.
My salon is located St. Louis, Missouri, Clayton, Missouri-ish area. And where I started, I had one assistant throughout 5 years of being there. And then I went to, now we have 3 people working in a, 400 square foot space with 2 chairs.
Yeah.
We're potentially looking to hire a few more people, but I know that sounds crazy because we only have 2 chairs, but it works. And I feel like the work-life balance is something I always strive for. And I think stylists in general really, really hunger for that. I've talked to a lot of people in situations that seem to be almost like prisons and there's no flexibility and no freedom. And it kind of blows my mind because I've gotten so used to that structure that we have, which is very, very much come when you want, leave whenever you want, open door policy. And that is kind of jarring, I think, to most people. Like, wow, that exists. That's normal in your world.
What has the response as you grow and as you recruit for stylists and you get and the awareness of your business keeps growing? What's the feedback you get from other stylists or salons about your methods or how you go about business? Have you gotten good feedback, bad feedback? What's it like to be a DTH salon where maybe everyone around you is still doing things a different way?
I think there's a lot of confusion, and it's kind of like what you said. Like it's like kind of mentioning the easier way. It's a simpler way to do things, but it's so complicated because we're used to having so many things put in place to complicate literally everything. So the biggest feedback I get is that it's like, I don't think they believe it until they come work for me.
That seems to be a really big response, is that it sounds too good to be true when stylists hear what Destroy the Hairdresser salons start to offer, which is that freedom and that unlimitedness. What, as a leader and as a boss and as someone who's growing their team and working on these methods, what has been the most transformational method that you've learned with DTH besides the foundations? I always know everyone's like, oh, I learned reactivity, it changed my life, which is very true. What are some of the foundational business tools that you learned in the program that you're like, that changed everything for me.
Foundational.
Removing retail, going cashless, removing gratuity, going hourly, station fees.
Gratuity
Everyone says, I know Sid's producing the episode,
and
she's listening.
hourly.
Everyone says gratuity free is one of the biggest. Why is that? Why it's funny because that seems to be, in my opinion, that's like the scariest method, but everyone keeps saying like that's the most transformational one. Why is that?
That is so funny. I can't even remember what it's like to get a tip anymore. Like, I forgot that was even a thing. Because that's how much I don't miss it. Like, that for me was so transformative because my emotion was tied heavily into that tip. Heavily. Whether or not I wanted to believe it, I even went through a period of time where I didn't even look at tips because I was like, I refused to get the emotion wrapped up in it. So I would avoid. And then at the end of the year, I'd be like, oh my God, look how much I made in tips. Which,
Right.
yeah, it was a lot. But then if I looked at it one day and somebody tipped me a lot one day, I'd be like, okay, well, what did I do to deserve this?
Right.
And then if they tipped a little, I'd be like, well, what did I do that they tipped less this time? When I would say, who knows what was going on with them? Who knows what was happening in their financial situation? But it was always taken personally. And I don't know. Whenever you start, it just feels weird. It always felt weird to me. It always felt icky. And then you get those people that were like, well, how much do people usually tip on a whatever dollar service? I'm like, it's up to you. I don't want to talk about this.
And then when you got rid of it, what was that experience like for you and for the client?
So freeing. For the client, they still felt confusion. I think there's a lot of confusion that goes on when you make these changes because it's not typical. I'm seeing it more and more where people are not accepting tips, which I love seeing that. But it's almost like the biggest thing I heard from clients was like yeah, I don't know. They love it. They seem to love it. Some of my stylists, I think, are still trying to get around the verbiage a little bit because it is confusing to communicate to the client, like whatever. But
it's funny,
it seems to feel good.
Funny that it's confusing because it's actually, again, the easiest way to do business,
Yeah.
but yet the most confusing way to do business. So, as a student, what would you tell other hairdressers out there that are like, destroy the hairdresser? I like what they say, but they kind of freak me out. Their methods seem really intense. What would you tell someone who's listening? They're like, I love it, but I'm really afraid to start the process of coaching.
I would say the biggest thing that I would say is that it's like a slow build up. Like, it's not like you just jump in and you have to make all these changes immediately. Before you know it, you'll be seeking the changes and you have nothing to lose by doing something that you're scared of. I think that's what I'm always pushing people to do, is do the thing that you're scared of doing, as long as it's not hurting anybody.
Right.
But as far as, a negative intent, but yeah, it's not as scary as it sounds. It's a lot more intuitive, I would say. Like, you're being led, but you're being guided into a direction that works best for you. That was hard for me to get to. I was, for so long, I was not listening to my internal voice. And I feel like once I started working with you and DTH and the methods and everything, that's when I truly started to get more in touch with myself and what resonates with me. And I think everybody could use that. That's so valuable to you, your business. It'll be more sustainable. It's just easier to make something last whenever it's something that is in line with what works. Yeah, what lines up with you.
I think what you're saying is interesting because a lot of people think if I work with DTH, I have to do all these things and I have to do them overnight. And then I hear people say, oh, they want you to do everything their way. But like you're kind of saying, it's like we're teaching these methods, but like eventually you start to seek them because they start kind of answering all those unanswered questions in the
Hmm.
salon, right? And so it's always interesting. The people that join are usually like, I listened to your podcast and I didn't, it was very triggering. I didn't like it. And then I listened to it more and then I started to understand. And then I got a coach and then I really understood. Like you said, there's like layers to it. What was the hardest thing to go through in coaching? I know obviously one of them was networking,
Yeah.
but what was what was the hardest like part of being a student?
Oh God, there's so many moments. It always feels like a hangover after having a coaching call with you because like in the best possible way. Because like now you have to like now you have to sit down and figure out like what is happening, where do we need to change, and if things are good, like yeah, whatever. Anyways, the hardest thing for me was getting out of my instant gratification desire because we're in an industry where it's all about instant gratification. I am I oh my God. I go back to that one call. I go back to that one
You have like
call.
a photographic memory. You remember so many specific calls, and I'm like, oh God, I wonder what she's gonna say.
I know.
I wonder what I said.
Oh my, yeah, you were like, what did I said that? Like, yeah, it was transformative, changed my life. The hardest thing is like the hardest thing for me was getting a hold of my ego, truly. Like I didn't think I had one. I always thought I was operating from a place that worked for everybody, but in all honesty, it was actually destroying
Mhm.
little bits of me, chipping away at me for so long. There were so many situations I allowed to go on for so long because I was in the state of constantly people pleasing or like trying to feel something. So like, we had a call, I think it was earlier this year, and it shed light on this situation. You were like, have you ever I hope this is okay to say. But you said, have you ever considered you might have ADHD? Because I was constantly spending money and I was traveling and I was going, and I still have this problem. I have to like recalibrate. And then once I center, I'm like, okay, everything is okay. I don't have to keep hopping on a plane, going to this place to get my hair done, going here to like show my face, whatever. And then not even a week later, I go in to see my therapist and she was like, have you ever considered you might have ADHD? Because I shared the same thing with you
Right,
and her. It was extreme, extreme spending.
right,
Addressing things like that has been the most difficult, but it's also been the most enlightening. And if I let that go for so long, like I mean, if I would have let that go, that would have ended up in a lot more chaos than it actually was.
right.
um it's interesting. It's almost like it's your approach has helped me to face fears that I didn't even know I had. So phobic of everything related to medicine, phobic of everything related to facing finances, totally just petrified of human interaction and connection, and not even from a place of like, I think I used to think like I had to be friends with everybody. And this is another thing I've never forgotten. I don't have to be friends with everybody. Just having a community of people is healthy, and I don't have to get so close with people and force them to be my friends or force myself into this box.
Right. We can be friendly and
We
not
can be
friends.
friendly. Yes, which I never understood that before. You were like, I was like, I don't know, I just don't feel like I fit in. You're like, oh, so it sounds to me like you're looking for a cult. I was like, oh my God, you're right. I want everybody to believe like me. I want everybody to think like me. I want everybody to see things the same way, but that will never happen because we're all
And thank God
so
it doesn't,
different.
right? Thank
Thank
God.
God.
It's so
Thank
true.
God.
You brought up your spending, and I think this is something that a lot of creative people deal with, especially hairdressers, because our income is, you know, before hourly pricing, our income is kind of like all over the place. We make a lot of money and then we make no money. Then we make a lot of money, we make no money. And so when we have money, we spend it, right?
Mhm.
But the problem with that, with a lot of salon owners and hairdressers, is that we don't know what the next week is going to look like. With hourly pricing, you kind of do. It's a little easier to kind of project what it might look like as you book yourself. But when we're kind of doing a la carte or whatever, we're on this roller coaster, this income roller coaster. Um, and one of the things that you and I worked on heavily was, getting the right accountant is a huge one
Mhm.
that takes you seriously, because there's a lot of accountants out there that'll be like, oh, I'm just gonna make, fudge the numbers, make it, you don't have to pay a lot of taxes, and and early in your career when we're younger, we're like, oh, that sounds great, right? And then as you get older, you're like, wait, it looks like I don't make any money. I can't buy a house. I can't get a car. I can't, if I want to buy the building and open a salon, I don't have the income to show for it because I don't report it properly. So number one is getting the right accountant, but also changing how you get paid, giving yourself a salary. How was that, what was that like? Because I think that's a big part of our program that we don't really market, which is like, we're going to get you into a different financial setup as a salon owner. We're going to get you off the hairdresser commission when you own a business and get you into a salary. What has that transition been like?
Oh my gosh. So getting an accountant, I had one before, but they didn't really truly know the business. And then I didn't have employees before. The fact that I'm even here doing this now felt like a pipe dream. I didn't think it would ever exist or happen. So getting myself on a excuse me, salary. Talked to you about this before. I before was so used to just like spending everything I had in my account, literally, like everything in my account was spent. And I would be like, well, let's see what happens next. Let's see when I get more money to fill this up with. Like
Very
it's
hairdresser. It's very
it's
hairdresser.
very hairdresser. And not enough people talk about it. And myself included. I feel like it is a conversation that needs to be had because I think we're all hiding under this like blanket number of, yeah, we bring in this amount of money. We bring in a ton of money, right? But then what about when taxes roll around at the end of the year
Right.
and you're like scrambling to pay that off? So I will say the transition was really difficult because I had to scale back a lot of my aggressive spending. I had to scale back just in general, but it wasn't necessarily like a bad thing. I don't want people to take this as like, oh, this is horrible. It's actually been really nice, and I found fulfillment in different parts of my life. I was seeking something in other parts by traveling, spending a shit ton of money, and then like being in complete chaos and making up for it. So I will say I'm still in the process of rebuilding that portion of my frivolous spending in
Right.
this moment now, but it feels different. Like it doesn't feel as erratic or crazy or
It's more
outlandish.
grounded.
Way more grounded, way more connected to everything in my life. But um, yeah, it feels so good to have an accountant that takes you seriously and talks strategy. I'm so excited we're talking strategy now for next year because she's getting me brand new. That was scary. I should have mentioned that. That was scary and so much information to push through. Um,
And what's funny is like this is the information as a business person that we should all know, but
yes.
accountants and lawyers sometimes they don't walk us through things because they're like, oh, you're just this is a hobby career, right? It's not taken seriously. And I think DTH is, we have an accountant. Obviously, you work with our accountant. We have an accountant that our students use. And what's great about our accountant is that she understands not only how the industry works, but what the goal of DTH students is. And the goal is always to get the salon owner on a salary. But there's a lot of groundwork that has to happen before that. And you've been pushing through and doing all that. And it's always a pleasure to watch students who take it seriously, even when it's hard. They're like, I can't spend as much, but also all my bills are paid, payroll's good, I'm saving, you know, usually our accountant gets you set up with your retirement. So all your money is still yours. It's just going and doing more for you. And I think as hairdressers, we're like, no. When money's mine, it's in my account and I can use it. And a business owner has to get to a place where they're like, it's all my money, but how do I, again, how do I think in wealth? How do I take this money and let it build more wealth for me, where I don't have to keep doing hair for the rest of my life? If you want to keep
Mhm.
doing hair for the rest of your life, that's absolutely fine. But our attitude towards the physical labor of hair changes as we get older. What do you think now that you've been in coaching and you're kind of getting everything on track, you've changed your methods, you're using DTH methods, you're hiring, you're growing your space, you have the right accountant. What's the future of Anagen Salon?
Oh gosh, I'm constantly seeking out new properties. I always want to I want to expand. I envision that happening. I feel like I'm in this like interim of getting right with like my accountant and understanding this whole process. So like when I was looking at buildings before, I had never dealt with an employee before. I never had anybody on payroll. It was almost like I was just dipping my toes in that, but the future, I definitely see an expansion of some sort.
The future is you owning the building.
That's exactly right. Yes, for sure. Yeah, and just an expansion of the brand in general. I've already, you pushed me. I say push. That's a very light term. There's really no pushing. It's just this little
Sometimes it's a
David
shove.
in my head. It's like, yes.
Sometimes I'm shoving, sometimes I'm nudging. It's different styles of pushing. But
Yeah.
now that you're kind of, you've been coaching for almost, I would say, a total of almost 3 years.
Mhm.
You've done a lot of transformational work. It's been amazing to watch you. What are you proud of in yourself? Because you've been giving me a lot of the credit, but I'm not doing any of the work, right? I just say the things. But what are you proud of in yourself that you've been able to achieve?
I'm really proud of so many things, honestly. The ability to like be myself more, the ability to lead. I was so fearful of like public speaking, and I've been hosting some education classes for the past few, I don't know, months now, and it just feels like a lifetime ago that I started. So like the transformation that happens, you don't even notice it happening. So it's hard to like take a step back and actually recognize what I've done, but I'm so proud of that. I'm proud that I was able to launch my coaching career, which that was so scary just to announce that. That was like having another baby. Yeah, and just my ability to keep moving through and realizing and knowing that every stage is just that. It's just a stage, and it's building those foundational layers in order to have truly lasting fulfillment and success.
I love that. You're married to a lovely pilot. He's German, correct? Or Swiss?
Finnish.
Finnish.
Yeah, I'm
You know,
German, but he's Finnish.
there's a rumor about Finland that it doesn't exist.
Oh, is there that rumor?
There's a rumor. It's like a viral video that's been going around for a while that Finland doesn't actually exist. And the question they ask is, have you ever met a Finnish person? And everyone's like, I've never met a Finnish person. And so what makes me laugh is you're like, my husband's Finnish, and so I can debunk that rumor. Finland is real. We now know of a Finnish person, but it's this big. I mean, there's not a lot of Finnish people.
It's smaller than I think Chicago, like the population of Chicago. It's tiny.
Exactly. So you heard it here first. Finland's real, and we have a Finnish person on deck.
Right.
What has his experience been watching you as a DTH student?
What is it? Oh gosh.
And for your family too, like your mom, your dad, your brother, like what has everyone been seeing you go through?
Well, first of all, I love my family dearly, but I don't think my mom would ever admit. She did the other day, actually, because I cried. I don't cry often, but I definitely cried. And she admitted She's very proud of my success and like my growth and all that stuff. But oh my gosh. My husband, he is the sweetest man. He just supports me through and through, but he's always so proud of everything. He just has so much fear with anything growth oriented, but every time I do something new, he's like, "Oh, I mean, I'm just so proud of you, babe. I'm so proud of you." I think what he sees mostly, though, which you've taught me to stop doing this, he sees mostly that I want to coach him all the time. I'm like, what's your next level? You're like, just be his wife. I'm like, okay, I'll try to be his wife. We go on date nights all the time.
Yes, leave the coaching to the coaches. And if you are a coach, do not coach your family. It does not work. I can tell you firsthand experience. But it's such a great practice to just be someone's daughter or just be someone's wife, or just to not play a role, but that it's okay to take off the other layers. When I go home, I can take off the salon owner layer, I can take off the coaching layer, and I can just be the boyfriend, the husband, the partner, whatever it is. And I think learning how to, it's not like you're changing who you are where you go, it's allowing yourself to embody different roles and energies that we all have, because we're not one thing, right? We're so many different things. So it has been a pleasure watching you grow and working with you and seeing your successes. You should be very proud of where you're at. And I know that you're not even done, but just the transformational work that you've done so far on yourself and on your business, and it's very inspirational. What are your final words for our listeners? If you have 300,000 people listening, what do you want to say to them?
Oh God, when you say it like that, it's so much pressure. I want to say to everyone, what do I want to say?
I put you on the spot.
Yeah, you did. My brain just like short wired.
You can say anything to them.
Yeah, obviously, if they're listening to the podcast, I feel like they should definitely get involved in Destroy the Hairdresser. There's nothing you can lose. Nothing at all you can lose, especially because the stuff that you will learn inside of coaching, I think everybody can benefit from a coach. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think I can ever work without a coach again. Yeah, because the methods you'll learn are just transformative inside of your home, inside of your business. Your entire life will completely change. And if you're not seeking change, then that's kind of scary.
Get a pair of binoculars. Start looking.
Yes, exactly. There's plenty of areas. It's constant.
We have to wrap up the podcast, but I have, when we do our follow-up on Instagram Live, we got to get into the extension world, because you are in the extension world. And I want to hear more about the methods with extensions and, what you learned before versus what we teach. So we'll dive into that when we reconnect. But your story has been a pleasure to listen to. I already knew the story, and it was still lovely to hear it again from your perspective. And I can't wait to keep working with you and see what you do next. I'm really, really excited. How can people find you and follow you online?
You can follow me at anagenatelier.com, and then we have Anagenesis Coaching. Those are two different ones. Or you can follow my personal page where I have a lot of my babies and cute husband stuff on Shanagen.
Shanagen.
Shanagen. SHANN_AGEN. Shanagen.
Great. That's hilarious. I love that. Is that new, or has it always been like that?
It's funny. The assistant that her and I had some differences. We're fine now. But she was like, she would call me Shanagen. So then I changed my handle to that in 2021.
That's so cute. It's so cute. Yeah. It's great. Well, Shanagen, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I can't wait to follow up with you and see where you are next time.
Yeah, same. Thank you.
Scene.
Done.
That was great. How do you feel?
I feel good.